This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. My mom and I had some great ideas for our creative collaborations. One of the biggest ones was me writing a script and her producing a movie about the women from our island in Croatia who were abandoned by their husbands at the beginning of the 20th century. The husbands left mostly to the States looking for work, thinking they will go and earn some money and come back. Most of them never did. So this tiny little Mediterranean island became inhabited and ruled and managed by women. These women did everything men would do. They were building houses, they went fishing, they took care of the farms, they took care of their children. It was an island of Mediterranean Amazons. We never did because my mom passed away so surprisingly. And I'm sad we didn't. And now that I'm working with this topic of mother's lessons, oh, how I wish I had her here to maybe even write a book about lessons, learning lessons between generations. The point being, don't wait. Do things while you still can. And I am very, very excited and very inspired by the mother and daughter, Hallie Bateman and Suzy Hopkins. I interviewed for this episode, illustrator and writer duo who published 2 books together, What to Do When I'm Gone and the other, What to Do When You Get Dumped. The books are such a joy to read. People get scared of the serious topics, but the books are really heartwarming and feel like a big hug. And I just want to highlight the most important thing I took out of both of these books. You have to be kind to yourself, especially if you're walking through hard times and grief. It is so hard for us to be kind to ourselves. We are trained to be kind to everybody else. And this idea of taking care of ourselves and being kind to ourselves is so foreign to us. And the other one being, sooner or later, you're going to find your way back to yourself and it's going to feel amazing. You will heal. So, welcome to this week's episode. It's such a beautiful conversation. Have fun. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Tider. My guests today are Hallie Bateman and Suzy Hopkins, a beautiful mother and daughter duo who created and published 2 beautiful, beautiful books that deeply touched my heart. I feel very honored. I stumbled across them and had the chance to read them. Hallie and Suzy's books are called What to Do When I'm Gone, which they published in 2018, and What to Do When You Get Dumped, which is very, very new on the market. Suzy Hopkins is a former newspaper reporter and magazine publisher, and Hallie is a freelance writer and illustrator whose work has been published by The New Yorker, The New York Times Magazine, The All, and others. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Would you like to add anything else? No,
I don't think so. You covered it well.
Grandmother of 2 is my new title because Hallie has young twins. So
Hallie has little twins. Congratulations again. That's so
Thank
exciting.
you.
And I was excited to learn because I was reading your books and the descriptions on the back covers. And back then, when you published the first book, I think Hallie lived in Los Angeles. Suzy, I forgot where you lived, but it was beautiful to see on the cover of your last book that you are both in Cincinnati together, and we just had a little chat about this, how the family is now together, and Suzy are supporting Hallie with her twins, and that's so beautiful.
It's a very nice life for us.
It's incredible.
Tell me about your books a little bit. I would like to start with your older book, with What to Do When I'm Gone, which was the one that caught my eye. It appeared somewhere on Instagram to me. I have no idea where anymore. And I saw it and I made a screenshot and I thought, this is it. I need to invite these ladies. Our projects are so closely connected. Tell me about that book a little bit. How did it happen? Hallie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. So What to Do When I'm Gone started as an idea that I had when I was in my early 20s, and I was just kind of ruminating on my worst fears in the middle of the night, as you do. And one of my fears is losing my mom. I'm really close with my mom. She is kind of an enormous guide for me, and just it's hard to express, but it felt like if I lost her, that I would be paralyzed and not know what to do. And I was kind of grappling with that in this sleepless night. And I got an idea, and the next morning I brought it to my mom. I was living at home at the time. And I said, Mom, can you write me a book that starts the moment you die so that I don't have to be without your guidance? Can you just write a book that picks up the second you die and then takes me forward with advice? And to my mom's credit, she was just like, "Yep, I'll write that." And then she was really busy. She was publishing a magazine at the time, and I soon after was living in New York. So it took some time, and I would call my mom and say, "Mom, where's my book?" And she would be like, "I'm working on it." And then she wasn't really. It was just in her head. And then eventually, we got together in a small cabin in Maine where we just like, I think my mom came to visit me for my birthday, and we drove up, and I brought my laptop, and I was just like, okay, we're going to work on this book now. Like, the idea really did not leave me. It was years later. I still wanted the book. And we started to talk about it. I would ask my mom questions like, okay, you just died. What do I do? And going forward from there. And we had a conversation. I wrote down everything she said. And then I think we both loved it and wanted to work on it more, and kind of started to see it as a book that wasn't just, a packet of paper for my mom to me, that maybe it would be a collaborative project that we could work on together. And I was an illustrator and an artist just starting out, kind of, and making my first book at the time. And so I think this was like the timing the timing was right, and we both dove in. And I think it took about 5 years from maybe the point of me asking you, Mom. I'm not sure. But yeah, and then it's really an illustrated conversation between me and my mom about life and loss and advice. And it's, as we always say, it's funnier than it sounds.
I just want to open it up a little bit more to the listeners because the book is so much more than it sounds. It has recipes, it has relationship advice, it has parenting advice, self-care advice. It's really not only the loss and the grief, but also so many other points. Suzy, how did it feel for you?
Well, it felt as Hallie began to pose the questions for what she wanted to know going forward. At the same time, I had been a journalist for many years, and I had this magazine where I interviewed a lot of elderly people. And I could make an elderly person cry, and I did, by saying, "Tell me about your mother." And I realized the depth of these bonds, and also the loss for people when their parent was long gone. They're looking back on their life, and there was nothing written of their to say their values, their life views. It really goes way beyond advice, as more like sometimes we've called it mother in a book, because I have three children, two sons plus Hallie, and in writing my specific advice and thoughts that I wanted them to know after I was gone, it also reflects my values. And so the book has become, people have told us that it's a starting point for conversations with their own parents and within their families about sometimes difficult issues, including death. My own mother didn't really acknowledge that she was
Mm-hmm.
dying as she was
Mm-hmm.
dying, and that was quite common. So the goal is to open up to more conversations, because what Hallie and I experienced in the conversation that led to the book was very rich and felt very universal. And because of my background, I was able to see it that way, and how it might, it was started as a family project, but then became something that we saw as something that might be used by other people in really building greater family connection.
Mm.
And kind
It,
of breaking the ice of a tough conversation
yes.
with art, with humor, with just broaching the subject in the way that we do. I think that some people still freeze when they see the title, and we hear from people that they're like, I want to read it, but I can't open the book. Like there's a lot of tension that people hold about this subject for
Mm.
myriad reasons. But I think that approaching it with, an illustrated book is about as approachable as you can
Mm.
get.
Yeah, on
And then I
hard
think my
topic.
mom's humor and the tone of it really is her in a book. And the idea is it's not just advice about grief, but it's really addressing the fact that your life goes on, you lose someone and your life continues on, and like how do they, things happen in your life and you think of that person, and kind of how to move with that and keep going. And yeah.
Susie, it really resonates with me what you said about the book, because when I lost my mom in 2016, very quickly after, I had this big anxious moment that I was going to forget what she told me. And I had a feeling if I forget everything she told me and taught me, I'm going to lose the last grip on her. I thought then she's completely gone from me. And this is when I started writing a book. I started writing it down first, noting, like just making notes about her advice and her lessons. And this is what
That's
inspired
good.
this podcast. I
Yeah.
this started turning into a book of her like a life through her lessons, and telling my female friends about this book. It was interesting how they started reacting and reminiscing about what they learned from their moms. And this was clear to me, this needs to be a podcast. This needs to be a podcast with women around the world about what they learned from their moms. So this really resonates with me, what you said.
Yeah, and if you ever doubt your value as a mom, I mean, you can't even understand until later in life, I
Yeah.
think, the
Yeah.
impact your mom has had. And even you're asking these questions in preparation for this. Boy, I just was hit with a bunch of memories, and because my mom's been
Mm,
gone for 22 years, and I thought,
mm,
oh gosh, I'm really starting not to remember, but it just came flooding
yeah.
back
Yeah. Yeah.
because she's just so much a part of me.
Mm,
and
mm,
and and really her view carries on in our books because it was so integral to the way I think and the values that I hold.
mm-hmm.
So
Here's something that I missed in the book, and I just want to put it out there, because this is a very practical thing. When my mom was in the hospital, she also, like your mom, Susie, she didn't want to talk or acknowledge that this is it. Unfortunately, I tried opening up the topic, but she wouldn't. The only thing she told me at one point is that she wrote a will. But I was naive and I didn't ask where the will was. I thought the will was with this friend of hers who's a notary, or it's somewhere in the apartment. But then when she was gone, I couldn't find this will. And that caused quite a lot of legal issues
Wow.
because she told me, I wrote the will, I want you to have everything. I'm an only child. But then my father decided that if there's no will, he should, yeah. So that
Wow.
unfortunately caused a lot of conflict and a lot of emotional pain. I'm just putting it out there. Ask your parents where the will is. we
Yeah,
don't we don't think about these practical
Yeah.
things because we are, especially in these moments, we are so emotional. It would have never occurred to me to answer to this, where is the will? I was like, oh great, thank you
Yeah.
for telling me this, but anyway.
right.
Yeah.
Did you ever find it, Anna?
No.
Oh, wow.
Her friend who was a notary said she came to me, we wrote it, I signed it, everything, and then she took it away, and nobody knew where the will was, and
Wow.
Crazy.
it was quite a journey. But anyway, let's jump to the recent book. Let's jump to What to Do When You Get Dumped. Susie, tell me about this one.
Okay, so this we wrote What to Do When I'm Gone, and then it was preparing to come out in 2018, and a few months before it came out, my husband, as I was getting ready for work and was going to my office, and it was 2 days from retiring, and we were going to go on a long planned trip together, and he had already retired, and he announced that he wanted to pursue a relationship with his former girlfriend from 30 plus years earlier, and that he was, he had sort of a light in his eyes that somehow he was now in love with her, and this came as a surprise to me. So I had no idea, and 30 years in, and suddenly he was gone as of that night, basically. So my life just was upended in a way that I had a lot of trouble processing. So, I'm pretty practical. I was a mess. And so I was closing my business. My husband was gone. I signed up for counseling. I got antidepressants, and 1 year went by, and 2 years went by, and then 3 years went by, and I've moved to a new place and trying to set up a new life, but really struggling. Like 3 years in, all the help that I had, good counselor, all the help, and still I'm really stuck and struggling. And at some point when we were promoting the first book, I said to myself, I should write a book, What to Do When You Get Dumped, instead of What to Do When I'm Gone. That's the book I should be writing, is being dumped, and because I felt so savagely dumped. And so Hallie actually gave me a tarot reading, and the reader said, you ought to write a memoir as a pathway to healing. And so I'm a writer, and I am always bandying around ideas, and I finally had the time because I was retired from the magazine. So I started writing this book, and the way I started was interviewing. I asked around for people who've been badly dumped, and all you have to do is ask anybody and they'll know somebody.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I interviewed some people in very different locales, in men and women, and only a half dozen, and it was enough to actually make me feel better because they'd had terrible circumstances. They were devastated, and what I learned was I wasn't alone, and that the pain can go on for years because I was kicking myself. What's wrong with me that I'm not better by now? That I haven't moved on, that I'm still really grieving. And after talking to these badly dumped people, I learned that it can go on for years. They were saying 5, 10 years. They were crying on the phone sometimes after 20 years later, recalling how hard it had been for them. So I came to see the heartbreak. I didn't understand why I felt so devastated, really. The marriage had problems. It was, in some sense, I could see now that he had bowed. He wasn't really interested in being married, but at the time I really felt that we still had had something there. And so I began writing and it was in fact a pathway to healing. It allowed me to the book starts from the day a person gets dumped, and it's really me talking to the reader. And what I couldn't find in literature at that time, which was 2017, was some kind of comfort that I could absorb. And I wanted some encouragement that I was already 3 years out. Was it going to take me 20 years, which might be actually the rest of my life? When was I going to really come into my new life feeling whole again and not as broken? And the writing let me struggle with that and let me see. I assessed what worked and what didn't. And I weighed that on paper basically. So every time something I feel, it's me really weighing up the struggle as I went through it. And I did come out the other side to where I felt like the heartbreak had been integrated into my life, which it is now. And so the book takes the reader, in my case, it might depress people, but the span of the book is a countdown until the day your heart is unbroken. And I did it based on my actual countdown, which was I woke up one day, and that's the end of the book when I realized I was unbroken. And it took more than 4 years. It was 4.25 years. And so there's this complicated day countdown, and hopefully, other people don't have to abide by that, because it's such a unique process to you. Your grief takes as long as it takes. It doesn't abide by a schedule. And what I learned was to be kinder to myself in walking through grief.
What I love about both books is because of your charm and your humor and Hallie's beautiful illustrations. Both books deal with these hard and heavy topics, but they both feel like exactly, Suzy, what I think your intention was to create a friend's warm hug or guidance. It really feels like you found a friend who is taking your hand and guiding you with a lot of humor and charm and positivity through these hard times, and that's really beautiful. But the other thing that connects both books is these beautiful stories of transformation, how we go through these hard times, be it a loss of a mother or a breakup, and how they transform us, and this finding yourself at the end that really inspired me, that made me so happy. I especially like in what to do when I'm gone. How at the end of the book you say you actually don't need this book, and that is so beautiful, and that's also a beautiful understanding after our hearts were broken, and suddenly we realize I'm fine. I don't need help anymore.
It's all within you, but you may not feel like you have the strength to
Exactly.
to see it. And actually, the ending of What to Do When I'm Gone, I went to sleep one night and it was time to write the ending. And I said, I kind of asked my mom, who'd been gone for years by that point, I need to have an ending that's connected to this whole concept, because the loss of my mom informed the book as well. And when I was with my mom as she was dying, I was holding her hand, and at the time she was close to dying, I was swept up in this swirl of memories. It's probably the most spiritual experience I've ever had. I can't describe it, but I was in just a whirlwind of memories shortly before she died, and I was with her. And the ending of the book is about this river that connects us. And that came exactly from the moment of her death. And I understood that she's gone. But really, I feel very strongly, even in reviewing the book these years later and thinking about what my mom gave me, that connectedness is so there that she's gone, but she's here. So
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I feel that very strongly.
Yeah. But Susie, let's continue talking about mom. Since you were talking about her, will you tell us very shortly about her life? She had a very hard life.
My mom had a hard life, but she was a gentle spirited, lovely person who born in 1917, and she got a master's degree in library science in I think, the early 1940s, and met my mom or my dad on a sidewalk and was swept away by his sophistication and handsomeness. But he turned out to be, he went to war. He had a lot of combat duty in World War II and came back and was a violent abuser. And she lived with him for 30 years and did not leave and had 6 kids. And she left him after 20 years, then found out she was pregnant with me and went back for another 10 years. And you're talking 10 more years of abuse. And she
With a
just
small
couldn't
baby.
break away and never, this was never talked about. All the things that went on in the house, everybody basically grew up terrified when he was home from overseas. It was just a scary childhood, and she never talked about it. She was able to leave him when she learned he had a mistress in Japan. That was the last, and then she was able to leave him. And the not talking about these things and seeing how my siblings and I were all had some mental health damage from this, and nothing was ever spoken about. So I think that really informed my desire to talk about everything,
Mm.
because I saw that it was not healthy. So I think really that's the lesson. Oh, that's one of the many lessons I took from childhood.
How did she, because you wrote a book about being dumped or about a marriage that breaks up after a long time, how did she deal with that? She had 6 children. She was suddenly alone. How did she deal with that?
Well, at the end of her life, I did a memoir and I interviewed her, and we'd never asked her any of questions because we were just glad the marriage was done and we were free
Mm,
of our dad.
mm,
And she said, I don't know why I stayed. She never got help. She went to a counselor once, but the counselor said it was going to take more than one session. And my mom said, I can't sign on for that. Because she had 6 kids and she was
mm-hmm,
working because my dad
mm-hmm,
didn't send a lot of support. So my mom described it as, I was just passionately in love with him, and I was raised in a time when family was everything, and you don't leave a marriage, and basically you don't get more abused than my mom was
mm,
without dying. And she couldn't leave for reasons that are far beyond like my pay grade to understand. I
mm,
still don't, because
mm,
she was just, and the way in her mind she said, well, I was just so passionately in love with him and I
mm,
kept thinking he would change. So right, that's an
mm-hmm,
old story.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
maybe his promises this time, maybe he'll keep them, that he won't
mm.
do this again. So I can't explain
Yeah,
it, but
yeah,
there are a lot
yeah.
of lessons in there.
Tell me, can you share
Uh,
some with us?
oh my gosh, somebody lifts a hand to you, end of story. That's the primary lesson. I had a boyfriend early on who did lift a hand to me, and that was the end of that. So
Mm,
I got that lesson from
mm-hmm,
childhood. And
mm-hmm,
also my siblings and I, nobody, but I'm the only one who's ever gotten counseling help for what we experienced. And I think the other lesson is that my mom was not able to ask for help. And it
yeah,
was a different era,
yeah,
but I think that even if you think that help might be impossible to find, ask for help when it's needed. That was because
mm,
I'm pretty stoic and I think I can handle everything. And my husband leaving me let me know that I needed to take a different approach and say, I don't have the answers I need, and I need people to step in and walk me through this and tell me how I'm going to get out of this hole. So that was a lesson I took.
anything else? We have two now. Do you have a third one for us?
Um, I think talking about the elephants in the room would be
Okay.
the other lesson. Um, my siblings continue to every once in a while we'll talk about something that none of us knew in going back. We try not to go back too much, but we do talk about it. And I think that we would have benefited from discussing those really hard topics, which were never talked about in my family. So in raising my kids, I tried to put things on the table and address them instead of pretending like it wasn't happening.
Mm,
So,
thank you. Do you have any other lessons you'd like to share before we jump to Hallie and ask her what she's learned from you?
no, I'll be curious to see what Ellie is learned from me. I'm a slow thinker. That's one of the things she's learned in our writing the book. She's got a much faster pace than I do. So she's had to be patient with me in this writing process.
Well, we can always circle back to you, Mom, if you think of something else.
Yeah, we
No,
can always
I'm
circle back. Hallie, what do you feel are
Um,
most important things you've learned from Suzy? And it's interesting to
well,
hear if anything trickled down.
oh, it definitely did. I mean, it's interesting, Mom, to hear what you learned from your mom because in many ways, what you learned was kind of what not to do. It was stuff that she
That's
wasn't
exactly
able
right.
to do. And
Yeah,
the things that you taught me were by example, were, things that I follow. So, I mean, the biggest one is talk about everything. And I think that growing up, my mom was in communication with us about, so much. I remember being a little kid and my brother and I, it's somehow occurring to us on the same night that like people die and that we're going to lose. I remember like sitting on the stairs with my mom and I remember I don't know what you said, Mom, but I just know that you talked to us about it. You weren't like, "Oh, don't worry, there's a heaven, bye." Like it wasn't that kind of conversation, but um, I felt like we were able to talk about things. I think in our family culture, death was a dinner table conversation, as was kind of everything. Like my parents are both journalists. They met at the local newspaper. So I feel like there's a principle there of like truth. Like that's tough now in the media landscape that we're in now, but if you boil it down to what journalism is about, it's about telling the truth and bringing things to light that are hidden, and I think that it does sounds like it's not a coincidence that you sought that in your life, Mom. Like, and I
right,
think that we totally absorbed that, and I think that you laid the groundwork for me to be able to ask you to write what to do when I'm gone because you raised kids who are comfortable talking about death, asking for help, saying I'm terrified, can you help me? Like I think that even though it was my idea, it's like I was able to bring that to you and to even have that sense of creativity about it because of the way that you and Dad raised us. But I think that a lot of that real let's talk about it energy is very Suzy Hopkins. And then yeah, let me think of what else. I don't know if this is so much a lesson, but unconditional love, like I feel like that's a incredibly powerful thing that my brothers and I received from my mom is like a sense of there wasn't any world where it's like you get a bad grade and you're a bad person. Like it
Mm.
was just like you're I don't know. I never growing up doubted that we were loved, that I was loved, and I consider myself really lucky for that. And then I think for a third lesson, I'll say that I think my parents have both kind of put a division between like journalism and like creative writing and art and kind of the world that I'm in, but I see a total connection. I grew up seeing my parents, overhearing them, talking to them about words, about books, about language and stories, and seeing them kind of go to work and write stories and talk about it and like ask questions and investigate. And I think that that has hugely informed my art practice, even though I didn't grow up, I didn't know a single artist. I didn't know that art was a job. It wasn't that thing, but I saw these two writers working and writing and talking about it. And I think that I inherited that sense of pleasure in discovery, that sense of curiosity. My parents are both big question askers. I see my mom like, you're asking for help, mom, and those, when you called those people who got dumped, but you're also gathering information and like reaching out to people and like knowing that like every person is a story that is like,
Mhm.
I feel like I have that too. And I feel like I have this sense of, even though I'm doing it in a very different way, I'm using comics and drawing and my own life and things like that, that there is something journalistic about even investigating your own feelings or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so so yeah, I think that the one of the big lessons I learned is how to be an artist, how to write, how to express yourself, how to seek stories and information, and that it's so fun and satisfying and worthwhile.
Thank you, Hallie. Do you have more before I
Me?
ask you the trick question? I don't know if
Oh.
I write it to you, but I always ask my guests at the end of the interview after they shared what they've learned if there was something important their moms weren't able or just didn't teach them that they learned by themselves.
Oh,
Do
I
you
for
by
sure have that.
do
Oh,
you?
I
Oh,
for
will you
sure have that too.
you both
I'm
Yeah.
do?
so
Tell
curious
me.
if ours are
Okay.
similar, mom. Okay, I'll go
Oh my
first.
gosh.
My mom did not teach me anything about how to do makeup, do your hair, have an appearance, get dressed. Like, I feel like I was raised with an absolute void of traditional, I don't know how to say it, like, and in some ways this isn't a problem, but it's just a fact. I wasn't raised with a lot of like, here's how to be a cute little girl with hair and makeup. I was sent to school with unbrushed hair. I had like dried drool on my face. I was wearing
Oh,
like the
I
same clothes as
brush
the
your
day before.
hair.
Mom, no. I would look in the mirror at the school bathroom and it would be the first time that I realized that my bangs were like this. And I just was adrift in middle school, was just hell. I remember my mom cut my bangs and I wore a hat to school, and then everyone was like, "Why are you wearing a hat?" It's not the end of the world, mom, but I certainly had to learn that myself, and it was a brutal, middle school, they're so mean. And to be like an awkward, terrified little girl who has none of that stuff, there was no like, let's fix your shirt or whatever. Anyway, not I'm not mad about it. I am just saying that was
I,
not taught to me. It was like, if you care about how you look, like that's trivial. So just go on and look like a mess.
But I see you wearing lipstick now.
Well,
So
I
you
learned
learned
it
it.
later. I learned it from my friends, like in college, truly. Yeah. What's yours,
apologies,
mom?
Hallie.
Okay, what's yours? What's yours?
I have to apologize after how many years? Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. You make up for it with all the other stuff.
Oh, good.
Susie, what's
Good.
yours?
The lesson would be what I have a right to expect in a relationship.
Mm.
And there was no discussion. It was, I think my mom's theory was hopefully I wouldn't get pregnant. My sister got pregnant at 17 and had a shotgun marriage. I think my mom was just really avoidance oriented, where she wouldn't discuss men or anything and hoped that by avoiding the subject, it wouldn't happen to me. And as a result, I just had no, I think what I would have benefited from is that you should expect a man to respect you, to have common values, to have common goals and want to be, what kind of partner do you want? And then, and there was nothing like that. Just nothing. It was just dead silence. So I think that is a lesson that I continue to think about, and to think about what my expectations of marriage were and what they would be now, knowing more than I did when I was 28 years old and got married. So I
But you
think
put
that,
it in your book as well.
yes.
What to look for in a partner. So you are sharing it now with the world.
Right. It just, it takes a
Yeah,
long time. I think
yeah.
I love the idea of a parent conveying to their boys or girls the basic respect that you're entitled to,
Yeah, respect.
and examining that before you willy-nilly jump into
Mm.
relationships that have the potential to alter the course of your life. So
Mm.
a
Thank you,
lot of
Susie.
lessons.
A lot of lessons. I know, I know.
Well,
You ladies,
yeah.
we could record 2 hours of lessons, I think,
Oh, I
with you.
know. It's so interesting. The mom thing is it just is deep. Like I think that we've learned through, and as I'm sure you have, like through so many conversations with people, whether it's that they had a closeness with their mom or if their mom was like didn't show up at all, even the void is so deep because there's just something so vital about that formative relationship that it really does feel boundless. Like I've thought about doing another book about mom daughter stuff too, or mom stuff. I don't know. It's just it's fascinating.
I had many guests who luckily wanted to come on the podcast who had very, very challenging
Wow.
relationships with their mothers. And when I got the first few, I was so nervous about interviewing them because I had a beautiful, like you ladies, a beautiful
Yeah.
relationship with my mom. And I was so nervous about talking to these women because I had no idea what that means. So being the nerd I am, I bought books about mother-daughter, relationships, complicated mother-daughter relationships, and I read a ton of books before these interviews. And now I've learned that through these guests, we can learn even from challenging or painful
Mm,
relationships. We can learn from those as well. So
yeah.
that's beautiful. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
I
Um,
just, in thinking about our conversation, I just hope that people from both our books take away a sense of comfort from it. That would make me very happy, because
Mhm.
I particularly felt it with the heartbreak issue, that just there often you're very alone, and people and I think this applies to people who are grieving any significant
Mm.
loss. It's not particular heartbreak. It's just such a lonely time, and I hope that the books can show people maybe to have more compassion for people who are experiencing loss, because it can be uncomfortable for people who aren't grieving to be around those people. And I hope they can just understand that their presence is important, and it doesn't have to be fixing anything. It's just being there for people
mhm.
and having more compassion for the time that it can take you to work through a significant loss.
I want to add to this, Susie, because this was on top of my list for notes for you, and I think I wanted to name the episode after then. This is the compassion for yourself. I think this is what I took from these two books and why they felt so healing for me and so comforting,
Okay.
because they both talk about this, about finding this compassion for yourself, which I think many of us are not trained to have. We're trained to take care of everybody else and have compassion with others, but it feels very strange and
Mhm.
unnatural to find this compassion for ourselves. And this is definitely what I want to highlight. Helle, do you have anything you'd like to add before we?
I think if people are considering whether either of these books are for them, I think to kind of echo what my mom was saying, it's like I haven't lost my mom and I haven't gone through a severe heartbreak to the degree that my mom did, but there's something so powerful and just transformative about spending time in these spaces before they apply to you. So
Hmm.
like you haven't
Mm.
maybe you're like me, maybe you haven't lost someone close to you and it feels so scary, like something that you just don't even want to think about. But it's such a relief to spend time in even the possibility of it, because it will sooner or later be it will apply to you. And I just feel so grateful that I've gotten to talk with my mom so much about this stuff, and that the idea for our, especially the first book, is like, maybe you share this with your family, and you guys have conversations and like find ways to like ask questions and like laugh and like, it sounds so silly, but like, prepare. I think maybe there's,
Yeah.
people that, oh, there's nothing you can do to prepare. But I sort of honestly am like, you can prepare because we know it's happening. So
Yeah.
you can prepare by talking about it. As we were writing the first book, I felt like I kind of was like, oh my God, we're geniuses. I felt like my mom's death was just like a meteor that was coming. It was. And it's not just my mom, it's all, all of it, death.
Mm.
And to be talking about it and to be addressing it. It's not like I think like, oh, and it's so it's not going to hurt. It will, but it's so, I feel so grateful to have talked about all this stuff with my mom, and to have this like channel open that we've really like kept alive. And I think that's more rare than it should be, in that if you can find a way to break the ice with your loved ones about the stuff you're most afraid of, the rewards are just so many. So yeah, I would encourage, I hope that the books are both kind of channel openers in that way.
Thank you. I will put the names of the books and the links to your websites in episode notes so my listeners can find them quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so
again. You
much.
ladies were, in a way, my experiment. I should have said this earlier on. This is the first time I had a mother and a daughter. In
Oh,
yeah,
amazing.
167 interviews. I once interviewed a mother and a daughter, but separately. And this is the first time I had a mother and daughter on the same call and same
So,
Wow.
interview.
so how was it for
It
you?
was fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to talk for 2 more hours with you ladies. Thank
Aw.
you so much for creating such comforting, inspiring, heartwarming books and
Hmm.
messages. And
Oh, thank you,
this
Anna. This
sounds
was just
silly,
a
but
delight.
yes, thank you for your beautiful relationship. Put
Hmm.
more
Thank
of
you
that
so much
out
for
in the
chatting with
world.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was great.
thank you. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.